Councilmember Hill.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson Smith. Here. Vice Mayor Kern.
Here.
Mayor Meyer. Item 3, a public hearing. In accordance with the rules of council, public comment will be heard before discussion by council. Once discussion has started, no further input from the public will be accepted. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Item 8, a public hearing for consideration of the adoption of the public downtown Petersburg tourism zone project ordinance. Dr. Solomon?
Good evening, Mayor Myers, members of council, Ms. Belton. We are here tonight to ask for your approval of a project ordinance for us to finalize our application for a Virginia tourism zone, first tourism zone designation for the city of Petersburg. And joining me this evening is Mr. Wirt Confroy from the Virginia Tourism Corporation. Also joining us this evening is the Cambria Suites and Hotel developer, Mr. Christopher Harrison. He's at the back of the room. Also joining us this evening is Ms. Jennifer Wally, who's with Cornerstone Government Affairs out of Richmond. For your information this evening and your consideration, I have prepared a document that you all have just received. We want to talk to you about the Petersburg Downtown Tourism Zone as a partnership for strategic investments and economic growth. And the very first page of the document, past the title page on the second slide for you all, it's at the bottom of your front page, is the application schedule. We've been working on a tourism zone designation since the beginning of the year. We first came to you all back in February and asked for your approval of a tourism zone ordinance that identified the boundaries of the tourism zone, which actually are the same boundaries as our existing central business enterprise zone. Some other things that had to be done as part of the tourism zone application was creating and submitting a tourism development plan using a template provided by the Virginia Tourism Development Corporation. We have an application fee that the developer is paying, but this document simply lays out the process that we've had to go through. And so we're at the final stages of tourism zone designation, and tonight we're asking for your approval of a project ordinance. The significance of the ordinance that we're asking you to consider tonight is that it's very project specific. When we came to you earlier this year, it was not in reference to the particular project, but a downtown Petersburg zone. This ordinance that we're asking you to approve tonight is specific to the Cambria Hotel and Suites project. Passing or approval of the ordinance provides us with access to gap financing tools that are offered by the Virginia Tourism Corporation. It's Virginia Tourism Development Financing Program. Our developer is applying for funding, a loan through that program. We're also asking, with approval of the ordinance would come approval of the tourism development plan, and we're also asking for authorization of other actions consistent with the state tourism gap financing program, and that is an actual performance agreement that the partners would have to enter into. This program is actually a partnership between the state, between the locality, and between the developer. And as part of the application and approval process, the next step for us is to finalize a performance agreement. Application for tourism zone designation, we see that as an opportunity for building on momentum of complementary incentives and opportunities that we currently have available in the city of Petersburg, including recent designation as a Virginia Main Street Program affiliate. We also have received a Drive Tourism grant. We also have a Downtown Historic District. We have the Petersburg Central Business District Enterprise Zone. We are working on Exit 52 redevelopment, which should begin sometime this fall. We currently have about $75 million in private investment development projects currently underway. And I just wanted to share a few key points about the Tourism Development Financing Program, which is one of the resources that would be available to us through the Petersburg Tourism Zone designation. I'd like to reiterate that it is a partnership between the developer, the locality, and the Commonwealth of Virginia. Once the project is completed and generating income, the locality works in partnership with the Virginia Department of Taxation to perform a quarterly review of state sales and use taxes collected on the new project. Each of the partners is then responsible for paying 1% of the quarterly sales and use tax that's generated by the new project. And that 1% payment from each of the three partners goes toward debt service until it is paid. And I need to reiterate that the developer owns all of the debt for the project exclusively, while the locality and the state assist with debt service payments. And that's 1% of the sales and use tax generated by the new project. One of the things that I also wanted to point out to you is that as we talk about implementation of a tourism zone, again, it's another opportunity, another layer of opportunities that would be available for attracting and enhancing business opportunities in Petersburg. We have several partners, the Virginia Tourism Corporation. We've been working with our local businesses and developers, the Virginia Resources Authority, the Virginia Comptroller's Office, the Virginia Department of Taxation, our Petersburg Economic Development Authority, and let me also say this, that we would be working with our Economic Development Authority as a partner in the performance agreement, because that would be the entity that would collect the 1% payments from the state, the developer, and the locality. We also see Petersburg Area Regional Tourism as a partner with the rollout of the tourism zone. Also, for your information, there's a map that I know you can't read the streets, but it shows the map of the boundaries of the tourism zone, which are exactly the same as for the Central Business Enterprise Zone. And then we wanted to emphasize that with your consideration of the project ordinance and the finalization of our tourism zone application, that we're really focused on economic impact and return on investment. And as we look at those things, we would be looking at enhanced visitor experiences, increased daytime and nighttime visitors, increased pedestrian and vehicular traffic downtown, job creation, new revenue, new investment, business expansion opportunities, revitalization of our commercial corridors, redevelopment of obsolete and dilapidated structures, new filming opportunities, Petersburg as a travel destination, and enhanced local amenities. And with that said, I'd like to call your attention to the very last page, or the last slide, which is something that you've seen before in terms of 20 good reasons to say yes to Petersburg in regard to our location and the things that Petersburg has to offer as an attraction. And with these things said, I'd like to ask Mr. Wirt Confroy to share with you his work with other localities around the state in developing tourism zones and how they have benefited.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here. I wanted to first say that the Tourism Development Financing Program, and the reason we're here tonight, was created in 2011 by the state of Virginia. The state at that time did a poll and a survey of developers, localities, lenders, financiers, and wanted to know what the state could do to make Virginia grow as far as tourism. And the clear answer was there needs to be some financial and some incentive support for development. There were a lot of projects that were started and could not be completed or could not even get a jump start, and that's really why the gap financing legislation was created, again in 2011. Another reason that the state is supporting this and has this fund available is the state also did a few years later a state tourism plan, and it was how does Virginia stay competitive in tourism? And the It was a 500-page document with lots of charts and numbers and information and data sharing, but the takeaway from that state plan was we have to develop new product to stay competitive. We cannot just continue to market the same thing over and over again. Further driven home this need for gap financing was the drive tourism plan that we did here with Petersburg. We had different members of the business community, the leadership, and got together and talked about what is Petersburg as far as a tourism destination, what does it need to first sustain what it has and grow, which is very important. And through that drive tourism plan, lodging was a shining star of what is needed to sustain and grow tourism. Throughout the state, we've had 4 projects that completed gap financing. The first was in Petersburg for a Hyatt Place hotel. It created a tourism zone much like you've done, and a year later, without even really discussing with us, released an article about how successful not only the hotel there was, but its positive impact on all the other businesses in town. So that's the first example of gap financing project. Another is the Cavalier Hotel in Virginia Beach. Will become the shining star and the newest and incredible beachfront, oceanfront resort on the East Coast. Newport News has a project where they built a city block of restaurants and a theater. And now Norfolk, their main hotel, as part of their downtown development, is using gap financing. All of these projects have things in common, which are many of the things that Landis has already covered this evening. Has the locality proven to us there's a deficiency in this type of project? And the answer's been yes. And all the different stages of application, we do great due diligence to make sure that if the state is going to invest in this and recommend that Petersburg do the same, we have to cover our bases and make sure all the due diligence we need to do is accomplished. And we're in that process now, really at the end of that, and there have been no blocks, much like the other projects that succeeded in this process. So we're excited about that. One thing about projects that are developed through gap financing is their large impact on other businesses. Through our drive tourism with Petersburg, we acknowledge the importance of history and tourism, and also the film industry. And in that industry, which Petersburg has seen a lot of activity and benefit, this kind of project will be a big benefit in that when film production companies and those involved in these productions come to Petersburg, and in their workday, they leave to go eat, shop, and sleep somewhere else, a majority of them, and they take those dollars with them. And we want to make sure that there's a place available for them to stay and do that here in town. Again, helping to sustain what's here and grow new businesses. Another aspect is that this is a project, it's not just about rooms, it's about food, the restaurant and dining experience, the meeting experience. I've seen design specifications for the new property. It will be modern, contemporary, and have fantastic amenities. So year-round, Petersburg needs to sustain and grow its tourism. That's film, but it's also sports, meetings. This project will create new meeting space for leisure visitors, for visitors who are tired and will pull off the highway and not know where they're going to stay. And this will be a new avenue for that visitor, which you'd be surprised how many Virginia visitors find themselves in that situation. So for all of these reasons, as I mentioned, there have been no roadblocks in our application process so far, and yes. Another thing that is important about this program, which is why the state is even participating, is that this allows us to invest along with the locality and the developer. Everyone has skin in the game, and it's not to the detriment of anyone, especially the locality and the state. Quarterly, all the monies used for this really part-time investment don't exist yet. They're all focused on the business and the income from that hotel property and not other revenue. So this will be something that does not exist. New revenue will occur. A small amount of it will be used to help continue the process and make the debt service. And once that's complete, the other monies from the hotel will pay the community back for their debt financing investment, and then have years of income and revenue that never existed before. That is aside from the jobs, part-time and full-time, as well as all the other ways this business can help the community. More and more hotels of this brand and nature are looking to the community for its talent, for food, for locally grown food, for art, a way to bring the culture and history of Petersburg into the property, so that it is kind of meshed into the theme and the history and the community of Petersburg. So again, for the state, this is a quarterly 1% of revenue payment. It's something that we feel comfortable with, knowing that the developer is the sole owner of the debt and accepts all that responsibility. So if there's an external or internal force that stops revenue, the state will walk away as well as the locality, and the developer promises to take care of that debt service if there's an agreement. So for all those reasons, the state is very excited about this program. We have 4 that are successful, and we know we'll have more. In general, for us, this is a successful program because Virginia's for Lovers is a strong brand, and we are in the top 10 of visitation in the U.S., but it is not a given, and we have to fight for that every day, and the way we do that is new development, and this project is indicative of that.
At this moment, I take any public comments.
Where do I go?
For the voting minutes.
Oh, okay.
And if possible.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gloria Brown, 1557 South Sycamore Street in Petersburg. As a resident of Petersburg over the last 12 years, coming in the height of pursuing the historic development of downtown and being the president of Landmark Resource, and I am a new member of the Petersburg Economic Development Authority. I definitely encourage the support to approve this because with all the facets that Petersburg has now, but all the shining stars and the diamond that Petersburg actually is, we really need to take advantage of it. We've gone through RUDAC, Berkshire, list, so we need to move forward and not stop on this project. And when I was in Roanoke, I stayed at Cambria. I love, 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 love it. So it would be an absolute shining star right at exit 52. My husband and I have continued to talk about exit 52 from the time we moved to Petersburg, and I think that would be a definite start to the transition. So I encourage the tourist zone because I think Petersburg has a lot of depth to grow in tourism with its historic element, the sports complex. We can definitely move the sports complex, the golf course. When people come into town, we have very limited lodging, and we want the monies to be here and not go other places, and Petersburg is large enough and they have the resources, so we need to definitely welcome that and encourage it and continue it to the end and not stop. So please, City Council, approve that, and economic development with the community's help, that we move this project forward because we have so many opportunities, and with the film industry, that is just a gem, and we're very blessed to have so many projects. You don't know what can happen for Petersburg. So let's move this forward. Thank you so much.
Good evening, members. Good evening, members of council. My name is Winwood Christian. I reside 410 Mistletoe Street here in the city of Petersburg. Just like Ms. Brown, I too encourage the passage of this and ask the city to support it, but I do so with reservations. One of those reservations come because, as I said, number one, we've heard this before, many of us. And when I say I've heard this before, I can go back as far as when Mr. Cuthbert's father was on city council, along with Remy Arnold, Bruce Edwards. I heard it before when our state senator, Rosalind Dance, when she was then mayor, not too long after she became city council person, following behind basketball star Mark West's father. And I say we've heard that before simply because we've seen the good, we've seen the bad, we've seen the ugly. And one of the things that concerns me is that once this tourism, or should this come into being, first of all, how soon is the city going to take care of its other outstanding responsibilities in order to invest in this? Number two, as I said, when I went to Texas in March, I had the opportunity to go to New Orleans, and I saw how the French Quarter, all of their tourist areas was built up, but yet people in the lower Ninth Ward and other areas that were devastated by Katrina, even today are still living like hell. And I say that because a lot of times development take place downtown in Petersburg, and you all forget that we in the 5th Ward and parts of the 6th Ward and 7th Ward, we want our area to look nice. 5th Ward has a hub of a lot of the tourism. When you look at, you have houses in the 5th Ward that were part of the Underground Railroad. You have First Baptist, even the church that my father started, which is now on Youngs Road, one of the oldest churches in the city of Petersburg. But you go up those roads that lead to that, and they look like first-class hell. Then when we're talking about job, economic development, are we looking at skilled labor or unskilled labor? We talk about our school system, but how can we expect our school system to get where it's supposed to be when the city continuously underfunds our school system? But I take it back, and again, I thank Madam Interim City Manager for the little amount above what we expected we did get. But it still goes back to when you say it takes all of us, and you're right, but at the same time, don't talk at some of us. Come talk to all of us. Because, and we're grateful for the Family Dollar being built up there, but it's going to take more than the Family Dollar. Halifax Street is a historical street. It's the only street in America where it has no street that crosses it that's the same. In other words, when Virginia Avenue stops at Halifax Street, it becomes another street. All of those type of things we are overlooking. We're not thinking about it. And I'm sorry, as a citizen, I have these concerns because, as always, who gets put out? Our poor, our seniors, and our young people get overlooked in the name of tourism and economic development. We don't want that to happen. And if we are, then, last thing, when we're talking about jobs, we have a number of people in this city who have felonies. What are you going to do to help them so that they can contribute to the growth of this city? Again, it sounds good, and I'm all for it. Even though, as I said, I've heard it all before. I just hope that we make it work this time. Thank you.
Any more comments?
My name is Ron Flock. I live at 1708 Pender Avenue, Ward 1. members of council, and Mayor Vice Mayor.
Speak
I am hesitant about this whole thing. One, we don't even know. There's a group of hotels. None of those hotels fall into the same category as the ones you mentioned. The Cavalier, the Hyatt. None of those hotels are coming here. We're gonna get a 2 or a 3-star hotel off the beaten path, and even when the movie people come in here, they're gonna go to a nicer hotel. They're not gonna go to a 2 or 3-star hotel. They're just not gonna do it. This city needs to save their money and invest not in tourism, but in education, because that's the long term. Education, getting our kids educated and put to college, put into a vocational training so that they can come out of school and go to work and not come out of school and have nothing to do, have 0 avenues. That's where we're at. We gotta look at the long-term goals. Families will not move here because they will not bring their children to our schools. I tried to get custody of my son, but when I ended up moving to Petersburg, I stopped that because of the schools. That's where the money needs to go. We don't need to be worried about tourism. Tourism, it pays for itself, but there's no gain. It's constant maintenance, constant upgrading. You don't see the end to the game. But education, there is an end to the game. It's the youth of our families growing up and making this city strong. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Barb Rudolph, 1675 Mount Vernon Street, Petersburg. I think it's great that everybody who comes up here has kind of a different perspective on this and different comments, and mine is different than all the others too. And I think it was great to hear about it and to learn of the support from the state, and that makes me feel more comforted about the prospects of this. And I did have a couple things I just wanted to point out that maybe you as council members might want to inquire into further as you make your consideration. And one of those was hearkening back to in May, when there was other discussion about the development of this hotel and applying for a HUD grant for $2 million. I don't think it's come out in the public what's been the disposition of that and how that may, I realize that may have a less than significant impact on this, but it would still be valuable when we're having a public hearing about the development to learn about where that is in the process. Because now when we look at this and this timeline, and you're looking at September, which I understand is coming upon us quickly, it's really been almost a year since the project was announced. I'm not saying if there's any foot dragging going on, but because it's been a significant amount of time, I think it's valuable to share that. The other piece I would note, and some of this is going back to the initial information that came out with the agenda. I think the ordinance or resolution, it mentioned that the estimate of the, I think the tax value would be about 200, this was an estimate, would be from the hotel, once it's built, would be about $200,000 a year, and it would be, I guess, 1% of that, plus 1% of the sales, but we don't know what the amount of the sales are. And we don't know what the amount of the loan is. And it did specify that the developer could borrow up to 30%, which I think is about $5.6 million. So, and I don't know what the interest rate is. It seems to me like debt service on $5.6 million would still be a lot of money and possibly worth it to the city, but you'd have to think about, you would be forgoing some revenue, because some of that revenue would be that ordinarily would be used for other things, basically even just trying to make the city's financial situation whole, would have to be diverted to go back to paying for this debt service. So all of those are considerations, but overall, I think it sounds like a great opportunity that's worthy of consideration. Thank you.
Are there any more speakers?
I don't want to speak, I just have a question. Where do we find this plan that this Dr. Duncan was talking about?
I said, you state your name, when you're asking the question, I need your name is.
Victoria Revere, 216 North Sycamore Street. I hope to next month open the boutique